very happy Baishaki, happy Vishu, happy Bohak Bihu, happy Pana Sankranti, happy Pohela Baishaki. It has been my pleasure to be with you today on this auspicious day, and we hope from today onwards our miseries will start going away. I wanted to present the first meeting some 15 days back, but because of my illness, I couldn't do so. And subsequently, in the past 6 weeks or 6 lectures, we have been fortunate to listen to various experts and professionals who all talked about various problems and product industry and what we do in this COVID-19 series. I thought that again going through the same will be of repeating or bottling the old wine in new bottle. So I thought I could share some of my experience in a different dimension and see what we can do in this post situation. As introduced by Swarna, I passed immediately after passing out in '68. For a period of 4 months, Dr. Naidamma was kind enough to give me a job in CLRI as junior scientific assistant, and I was put in PL 480 scheme, the economic division. My job is to prepare a complete literature on the Indian livestock and availability and present it to the US government. So this was my challenging task to start with, and in the process, I had interacted with various scientists of CLRA, captains of the industry, and many people, and gathered information on the availability of raw material and how they differ from place to place demographically. This is, even before I became a tanner in production, I had a little knowledge, tip of the eyes, to know the products, to know the raw skins and hides from different parts of the country and their characteristics. So this has helped me when I joined Bata in the year '68, October onwards. For 18 months, we were put into rigorous training as management trainee. In fact, one of the tasks was to manage the factory without the factory manager. The factory manager will be sent on a leave, and 1 month I have to manage the factory. So that sort of rigorous training was given, including a 3-month assignment in rawhide buying at various places. So this process has opened my horizon and added with my earlier knowledge gained in CLRI has really seen me through buying rawhides for Bata from various places in Bihar, like Katihar, in Assam, Guwahati, Silchar, Madhubani, Muzaffarpur, in UP, Moradabad, Meerut, and in Vijayanagaram, in Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Chenganacheri, and so many places, Ranchi. It's beautiful because this experience, even though the job may not be so interesting like a computer job in an air-conditioned atmosphere, but it was really eye-opening to see how each area of India was giving different types of leathers. So this has helped us, and when I was posted in the tannery as in charge of production in finishing, we were making about 50,000 square feet of upper leather, cow upper in full chrome. About 40,000 feet was corrected grain and printed, and 10,000 feet was full chrome, full grain upper. Maybe you all will know that in those days, Bata was producing 2 famous brands called Jalsa and Ambassador. This Jalsa and Ambassador were of full grain leathers. They are high priced, and you have to really specially make efforts to produce these leathers, and the finishing has to be absolutely important. And they were semi-aniline, but almost looked aniline. And then we were making about 10,000 to 12,000 square feet of katta leathers, kattais, that is buff lights, which they called it in Bata language, kattais. And once in a week, I was finishing 10,000 feet of buff calf, which we called it bachakata. And this was made pure aniline with a dry mill effect and a shoe called Relax. It was a moccasin, a slip-on shoes, again high priced, was made by Bata. And in those days, this type of shoes, the high-end shoes, were available only at particular earmark shops, like the Connaught Circus shop, the Bata shop in Chaurangi, Bombay, Colaba, and Chennai, Anna Salai, and Bangalore, MG Road. So you can't get these high price items all over India. So that was the selling mantra of Bata, that because they were made in small production, so they didn't want to create a problem in demanding. So, do you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Ah. So I was working in these atmospheres, and it was a real task. And in those days, I was also made a special, given special assignment to make 10,000 square feet of splits leathers. The splits coming out of chrome as well as vegetable leathers. Because we were also making about 500 bends in the sole leather canopy. So all those things have to be taken out and make splits. And these splits are to be used as insoles in the leather shoe production. And with all these things, capacity-wise, it was considered to be the largest tannery in India in those times. Today, of course, we have many tanneries producing such huge capacities. But imagine the machines that we were disposed of were only very few. I had 2 padding conveyors and 2 4-gun horizontal bellows spray, which 50% of the time was out of order, and 1 Master Genie oil heated plate and 2 Turner plating machines. This is the machines that we had to produce this quantity of leather, and it was a tightrope walking. And every day was a nightmare, and next day was a fresh day. So this sort of working conditions really made us on run. And the worst thing is, because it was the factory was in Bihar, 70% of the time we had power cuts. There is no power there. So we have to depend on the generator. And generator cannot run all the time because it will break down. The diesel has to come. So many problems. So with all these things, we were able to produce. And if we don't deliver it by the next evening, next morning, 2 trucks, one from Bata Digha factory, which were making sandals and chappals for the entire Indian market, and Bata shoe factory in Bata Nagar, they were making about 50,000 square feet of leather and non-leather combined shoes on their conveyors. If you don't supply this leather every day and the trucks don't move out, these 2 factories will come to a standstill. So we were really, you can imagine what type of heart attacks we should have had every day. And added to this, my factory manager was so kind enough to pick me and my ex-12 colleague, late J.K. Devarajan, to work on a leather boat plant, because we were having lots of shavings from chrome and the vegetable. So he said, you guys have to work, you are all BTechs and you have to do it, and we should make leather boats in this factory. So in that connection, I had come to Chennai and visited Madhavaram, Mr. Nakappa Chettiar's leather boat factory, at least about 5 to 6 times, during which time my acquaintance with Nakappa Chettiar was excellent. And we learned how to make leather boat, and the rubber latex used to come from Kerala, Kottayam, Kerala, and we made the leather boats, and the initial testing was disastrous. It was heart attacks for us, because when the Batanagar shoe factory made the shoes were breaking in the sole. So the leather boat became very hard and tough. We have to solve this problem. So we went here and there and found out. Ultimately, we took the help of Roman Haas in those days, because in finishing, I was using all chemicals imported from Roman Haas. We were having tinted lacquers, clear lacquers, then impregnating binders, everything used to come from Roman Haas. So we were having a very good rapport with Roman Haas in Balviji, and they helped us to give some soft binders, which was incorporated in the leather boat making, and the flexibility increased, and thereby we stopped the cracking issue. So this has given me a tremendous hope that any problem we come across, if we tackle it openly with cool-minded, we can get out of it, which is what we have to do in this corona stricken stage. We have to see what can be done and what has been lost and what we can do during the post-corona period. Nachiappan, next slide. Next. Then because we have to supply the leathers, it needed a proper planning. The Bata company, both the shoe factories, used to give us their fortnightly production planning, and we have to plan our raw material requirement based on that, the chemical requirement based on that, the machinery requirement of it. Everything has to be planned, and we have to execute the production under the worst economic conditions in those days. It was not such easy. So these things gave us confidence to evolve steps to tide over any problem we come across, which is what we have to do during this corona period. Next, please. After my stint with Bata, due to some difference of opinion with my management, I left them abruptly and joined BASF India Limited in Bombay. My first job was to test the chemicals coming out of the plant, give the quality control certificate, and then only the liquor, the product liquor or any other Syntan which came out of the plant will be released to the market. Until then, it will be in the vessels. So this, I have to work round the clock. Sometimes I don't go home. 24 hours I work. Because we had the big drums and other things in spray booths in the factory itself. So I had to test the product and release the product. So we had to do this first. That is how I started with BASF. And then I was put on to technical service, visiting various tanneries, demonstrating the products, and telling them or influence them more to buy it. That was a tough problem because the competition was there, even though in those days BASF almost had a monopoly, but still it is not monopoly. They had a problem. There was Colorchem, there was Endofil, there were other people coming in the market. The market was expanding, the industry was expanding, and you really have to run the race with everybody. So slowly we started adding chemicals to the kitty. So instead of only a Syntan and fat liquor based company, BASF India became started getting into the finished chemicals product. That's why we came in with pigments, binders, and in those days, one of the best hot selling binder was the protein binder. And in the protein binder, we had to come out with the soft binder also to give elasticity of the finishing film. And all these things involved a lot of research, lot of meetings. Almost every day we used to have technical meeting in the factory with the R&D manager, with the technical service managers, with the marketing manager, with the plant managers, with so many people. Every day it was discussed how our raw material has to come from various people. So we have to really go into all these details. And in doing so, I came across a lot of friends. I made beautiful friends in the industry who not only gave me support, but educated me also. I learned from them because it's not that I close my eyes that I know everything. No, I knew nothing. By interacting with other technicians, other tanners, other BTechs and LTechs and other people, I learned so many things that which helped me later on in my life to solve many problems with my buying stint. So this experience sharing of knowledge along with the technical know-how and open-mindedness has really put me in a really good position. From BASF, I left them after coming into Chennai. I left them. I joined NSW Leather Company. So from production to technical sales and service and doing, I took total 360 degrees turn, 180 degrees turn, and became a buying agent. Now this uniqueness of this buying is, Nachiappan, next slide, next one. This has given me a tremendous confidence in the sense that the policy of this company, which I like very much, is that when you are made their representative, you are given a complete authority to buy the leather. They only tell what day leather they want. You have to find out the correct customer, fix the prices, quality, and get the production done and give it to them. So this free-handedness was real strength to me, which gave me a lot of respect, and respect which I never used to imagine, that whenever I go to a tannery, I was not considered a man who has come to sell something, but I was considered a man who has come to promote their products. So I was taken as one of them in the family. So this has given me a confidence that, because initially I was a bit worried. Buying agent means suppose tomorrow I join and suddenly the company say, okay, go ahead, we don't want you. Then I'll be in the streets. So but that didn't happen, fortunately, God willing. I only progressed from step to step. I was not only buying one particular leather, we are buying complete product manufacturers worldwide, what they want. What the customer wants has to be translated to the Indian tanners. Here I have to come and tell them, look, we are looking for this leather, can you make it? And now it is not just that I ask them and leave it to them to make it and call you. I sit with them, find out the problems if they have anything to make it, suggest, try to do it with them and get the product out of it, and then discuss the price, and then discuss the quantity and start buying it. So this is a two-way traffic of buying for a company and who is selling the product to the other company. This two-way has opened up, and lot of discussions, lot of inputs used to go into this. I believe today in this COVID-19 period, this sort of exercise should be given to everyone. When I talk to people back in Australia or in Hong Kong, they used to tell me that they want leathers, this leather. Of course, their expectation, the demand is very high. They want moon, but at this price. So you have to tell them politely, look, you can't have the moon and the cake together. You have to have only one. You pay the price and you get the product. But if you want cheaper, you will get cheaper product, but it will not be a bad product. That much we can guarantee you. So this confidence I have to give it to the buyers, come back here and translate it into reality. This is how I have been successful. Of course, today many tanners may be making it, many tanners may be doing it also, because I'm out of the tanning industry for the past 7-8 years. So I don't know what's happening in the market today. But definitely I converted the low-grade cow calf leathers, low-grade cow lining leathers, and a lot of other leathers into a profitable finished leather of better value. What the market used to sell cow linings at, let us say, 80 cents, 90 cents in those days, I picked them up, tried to finish them with the fantastic chemicals. In this connection, I would recall my help that came from Stahl, who made the compact
It's
finishes.
5 o'clock.
So compact finishes, and that was really great. So with that, we started making printed uppers, dry milled uppers. So from 90 cents, 80 cents material, 90 cents material, we were selling at 140, 150, sometimes even at 160. So my tanners were very happy, my supplier was very happy, and we were very happy because we were making money in the process also, in the quantity. The quantity used to be in millions. So it was wonderful. A lot of tanners joined me, a lot of suppliers were there. In this connection, what really prompted me to do it was the linings, which used to go at a cheaper price, can fetch this price, put me to another bracket where in one tannery I used to see cow lining leathers being bought at $1.60, just drum dyed cow linings, which they used to call grade 1, at $1.60 by none other than Salamander, Ara. So I said, look, if the Germans are buying such a beautiful leather at this price, why can't we finish it and make it and we get more value and make it as an upper leather? So that prompted me to get all those better cow lining leathers, the so-called DEF, which the Erode market calls, or the Indian wet blue suppliers call it. So we said that DEF has to be made into cow upper leather. So with that, we started making upper leather in some tanneries in Ranipet, and many factories in China were crazy after the product. So we sold unlimited quantities of that. And the price was anywhere between $2.10 to $2.20. So imagine just a lining product which used to be only lining can go for upper. That's something which we add, value add to the product that we have without knowing the merit of the product, how it can behave in shoemaking. Now in that incident, we also made a lot of buffaloes, which again opened my horizon. We were making buffalo leathers for a company in Australia. But that guy came and said, look, Jack, we want some sort of new finish. We are bored with what we are getting now. Can you do something? And he showed me a leather sample from the United States, which looked like waxy finish. So I brought it home because one thing is, NSW believed in one thing, that they have confidence in you, so they send you everywhere. All the shoe factories I go in Australia and all the places that I visited all over the world, every shoe factory we go, wherever we supply, and go sit with the shoe factory managers, find out what problems they have, what experience they are facing, how is there any possibility of improvement, what can we do? So this sort of two-way interaction helped me to know better. So this guy gave me a piece of waxy leather, which later on I came to know is called Crazy Horse and Mad Dog. So that was new to me. So we came back, Ranipet, I sat down 1 week. There were a lot of people who helped me, especially Alpa, other chemical companies, sat with them, made this product in the tannery, and gave the samples to the shoemaker. He was excellent. He said, beautiful, this is what I want. So that product, we supplied lakhs and lakhs of square feet to his company in Indonesia, in Surabaya, where the shoes were made and sent to Australia. So in that connection, the same product, we wanted to promote it in different countries. One of them being in Durban. There was a company called Idle Shoes. So I went there. So they wanted this product, but they couldn't afford the price. So we couldn't promote it. And then we went to Johannesburg, where there is a company called Conch Shoes, if I remember correctly. They also did not want this high-end product, but they wanted cheaper product. So we had to introduce the Buffalo Zagarine leathers and Rambler leathers to them in Johannesburg, which was very good for them. So we had to come back, not have the success in South Africa. Then in Australia, when I went there, we were supplying this upper leather. One factory gave me a problem. Look, I'm having, you see in the screen, you see the lot of shoes, an array of shoes on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, one pair of shoes. Now these shoes, after the toe lasting and steaming, were showing white spots on the toe. They didn't know how this is coming, where from it is coming. So he was asking me, Jack, this is problem with your leather. Your leather is behaving badly. Take it back, everything. I can't use it. I spoiled already 500 pairs. Then I said, no, take it easy. We'll see what it is. So I went through the machines and making and warehouse to all the quality control division, everything. Then to my surprise, this is, I tell you, it's a luck. It's not out of my intelligence. It's just a luck. With the toe lasting machine, they were making steam lasting. So there was a drip of water. It condensed and dropping. And it dries that place in the shoe. And when it comes out, when they apply the polish and make it, this sort of white spots appeared there. So I told them, this is your problem. If you can arrest that problem, your shoes will be all right. That's why on the right-hand side, you see one shoe with the marking, the other shoe is not with that after the rectification. Of course, in the left shoe also, there's a very slight marking is there, but not visible to the naked eye. So this is how you have to involve in it with them when you supply the leather, because once the supply leather, it doesn't stop. Neither the tanner's role is stopped, nor the buying agents or buyer's role is stopped. Until and unless the shoe factories make the shoe, satisfy themselves, and it hits the stands, department stores, various other outlets, people buy it, happy it, and then only the circle is completed that you have done a good job. So this is another experience I want to share with you is how wide you have to open your eyes when doing it. You know, there was a company here in Pyramid which I used, One Body Tanner. We were buying red hair sheep for ladies' shoes. It was a Clark's factory in Australia, and they said, sorry, and the price was $2.80 or $3, something like that. I don't remember. But they said, look, at such price, I don't have to do it. I can bring English domestic goat and I can use it. We don't need you. I said, what's the problem? Problem is it's cracking. It's cracking? Red hair sheep? No, it cannot crack on a lady's shoe. No, there's something wrong. So with the tanner, I asked the tanner. So within 1 hour, we took an Air India flight and landed in Melbourne. I went to the factory straight, didn't even have bath, went straight to the factory. I said, what's the problem? Show me. So then Mr. Butler was the factory manager. He said, oh, you come already. So come, I'll show you the problem. So the problem was shown. and the shoes were tearing, the lasting. I said, no, this cannot happen. Oh, I asked the tanner, look, our hair sheep is so bad in tearing strength. No, 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 Jagannathan, it is not like that. It's only wool sheep that can be here. Even wool sheep can stand it, but something. So we were standing there and doing something. Then I just spoke to that fellow there, the operator, and called the foreman. I said, what are your standards and how do you do lasting? Teach me. I don't know shoemaking, and teach me. Then he said, for this cow, this we put the pressure like this, for this. Then I asked him, for this shoe, what is the pressure that you have put? Believe it or not, the pressure he has been using was for goat, not for sheep. I said, look, this is the problem. If you are using a wrong pressure for a wrong leather and use it there and you say it is cracking, it's not my problem, it's your production problem. Change it and the leather will behave properly. And they changed it, the leather came all right. So this is how you have to involve yourself and see how you can do it. Next slide. Yeah. Now, coming to the final part of my sharing my thoughts with you, you see, the new opportunities will open up only when you go around, involve yourself both ways with open eyes and do it. In today's circumstances, when the COVID, because today the Prime Minister has announced the lockdown will be up to 3rd of May. So that means we are looking at almost 5 to 6 weeks of closure of all factories. So when the factories go back and start, you will not know where to start. You can't suddenly start the machines because they have been idle all the time. The floors may not have been clean. The lights may not be working. The heating elements may not be working. You don't know what has happened in the 6 weeks. So you have to rectify all these things before you really switch on to the actual production. Maybe in a way, you have to do a test running and then do it. If you want to further damage, stop the further damage of the material. So this is how the lesson that we have to learn during this COVID based on my past experience. Don't start it, don't rush immediately. Slow by slow, do it. And I'm sure leather and leather products will lead the world. We will be the first country to be freed from COVID-19. The expectations are by June middle, Corona will be completely chased from India and we will be setting ourselves free. And India will be in preference to China. Already I have seen in one press note from Japan, TII News, where the Japanese Prime Minister has asked the Japanese companies, about 30,000 Japanese owned companies are there. There's 30,000 business houses in China. Now the Japan government has offered $2.2 billion as a compensation to shift the operations out of China. This is PFI post dated 9/4/20. Now, if this is the case, actually, the amount allotted by the Japanese government is 108.2 trillion yen, which is $99.3 million, $99.3 billion, and the next move will be the US and the European Union. They will also try to get out of China. So if that happens, the next destination will be India to start with first, then Bangladesh, Cambodia, Vietnam, and other places. Now with Japanese, we score better because we are already having a very good understanding and friendship with Japan. Already there are lots of Japanese companies working in India. So this will give an impetus to Japanese fellows to come here and start with us. So I hope this will definitely happen. Leading brands from US and European Union will be in India definitely. Perhaps they may, if the government allows, They may open their own brand shops, their own outlets. Employment levels will boost up because when more factories come, more FDIs flow in, employment will go up. Make in India will be a reality. This definitely will happen. And if I am very optimistic, very hopeful, I believe that the best Indian brains that has migrated out of India will return back to motherland because when they come, India will be beaming with economic growth and they will be getting their comforts and salaries what they used to get outside. So I hope this aspirations of mine and hope will become true after the COVID is over. So with this, I want to say thank to all of you for listening to me. And one thing last I want to conclude is this effort by Nachiappan and the Magnificent Four has to be commended. You will notice that Nachiappan is sitting in Ranipet, Swarna sitting in OMR, and Vishwanathans of Indophil and Vishwanathan Auditor sitting in Adayar. These four are beautifully managing it and coordinating it and giving us this sort of lectures, which at least keeps away our boredom in solidarity, in confining at home. So we will be looking forward more and more from them. And thank you very much.